Were you grown? Did you grow up in the Pontiac, or whereabouts were you situated when you grew
No,
up?
so I grew up as a classic, upper middle class kid born in Toronto.
Okay.
A stay-at-home mom and an accountant father, which then later became, raised by a single mom, which had great influence on me. But that also meant that in the summers I would go to summer camp, and at that summer camp we learned a lot of these different things about the value of wilderness and the experience that you gain by doing, let's say, wilderness expeditions, etc.
Right.
And essentially, I still feel like I'm a summer camp counselor, but more just for adults, as opposed to only for kids. And those, having that opportunity to be able to get out into, these incredible regions. And what I didn't realize when I was a kid having this experience coming from Toronto, some of the rivers that I went on were the Gimoine, the Noir, the Coulanges, and I didn't know anything about the Pontiac. I just knew that I was going down those rivers. And so when I came back here in 1992, I realized, I've actually been here before, and this is part of what has made up the mosaic of my character, which is now part of the fabric of my company, that that can speak for one of our big campaigns is I Speak for Canadian Rivers. And
yes,
and so we were involved in a big campaign in relation to the Navigable Waters Protection Act, which has been something which has had a whole series of different ups and downs over the last few years. This year we just had quite an interesting success story. Was that in one of our regions there was a group that was looking at trying to charge people for passage of canoeing and through their territory, which wasn't exactly their territory. It was a little questionable about whose territory it was, and it turns out that you can't charge people for passage of canoeing. You can charge people for passage on people's land, for driving and water, because canoeing is transportation,
right,
and water is in the public domain.
Correct.
And so, barriers to navigate, there are rules in relation to barriers of navigation, and I think that there's really an inalienable right for people to be able to paddle amongst our rivers, so much so that we go to a point where we offer a program at our base camp that if people want to try paddling for free, that they can just come and use our equipment, and we give them some pointers and instructions for at least their first hour. If they want to stay longer, then there may be a charge for that. But if you're going to be Canadian, we have certain inalienable rights, and one of which is, hockey is in our blood, but paddling is another thing that's part of our roots, and we like to promote that.
That is very, very cool.
Yeah.
That is very cool. I know that you have various creative programs to try and support people to introduce them and get them comfortable with being on rivers. So I think that that's phenomenal. I think you also have a program, if I'm not mistaken, where you support, I don't know if you have a foundation, is it a foundation you have, to support kids with autism?
Yeah.
And the autistic community.
So we believe that that access to our rivers is in everyone's right, and that there shouldn't be barriers to participation, in particular, being the mobility to be able to walk, or financially, to be able to afford to go. So we make a bunch of different accommodations to be able to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to enjoy that type of experience. So one of which is a program, an award-winning program called Whitewater Healing, that we started years ago for originally what we thought was going to be for autistic kids, and then for their families, and then for a bunch of ambassadors. But it turns out that although the kids really enjoy it, they have the opportunity, their entire family has an opportunity to be able to go out on the river without the pressure of someone having a meltdown of some sort, or it's in a very supportive environment. And then we get these ambassadors, some of which are world champion paddlers, who come out to help and teach and instruct and join in on this. And we realize that the ambassadors gain a lot from that program, and the families gain a lot from the program, and so do the kids. And what's really interesting is that we've worked out that water is the great equalizer, because when you see a family, and let's say they have an autistic child and a neurotypical child, and they're all out on the water. Everybody's smiling, everybody's screaming, everyone feels that little bit of intrepidation as we're entering into the rapids. And you can't distinguish when you see the two children from a distance which one is the neurotypical and which one is the neurodiverse. And that gives a lot of reward to my staff, everyone who's involved in that program is a volunteer.
Right.
And we get comments such as from one family came up to us and said, "Thank you so much. As a family, we haven't been out in public in 5 years because
that is so phenomenal.
If they go into a building like Walmart and the lights aren't right or the noise isn't right or whatever, and here I think the river is both an equalizer amongst everyone, and it also provides that that sense of connection with the land as well." So
that's marvelous.
Yeah. We also do a program. We have a specialized chair that was developed by a friend of mine whose partner has mobility issues, and so we've taken a series of people who are incapable of walking, many people who are paralyzed as paraplegics, including 2 quadriplegics whitewater rafting, and this chair allows them to sit up in a postural support position, and it has a series of handles on it so that in the event the boat were to capsize, the handle would be engaged and it would open up, and they would then be able to float freely and etc. And so
that's phenomenal.
Who
created that one?
And it's amazing. Well, I did, and it was really quite interesting because I had a woman who phoned me asking for if I had a donation for a foundation called The Brain Matters. And I could hear there was something in this woman's voice that it wasn't just a typical fundraiser like I get for could I give a rafting trip to Chio or whatever. And I asked what her connection was, and she said, well, my son was in an ATV accident and he has traumatic brain injury and he can't walk, but he has this foundation dinner every year. And I told her, instead of us just donating a few trips, why don't we organize a day where you can sell whitewater rafting for, at this time, $150 per person. You just keep all the money. And so they would organize 56 people, which is our maximum, to come with their son, who kind of uses a walker. At the beginning, he was, it was very challenging for him to get to the raft. We would carry him down. Yeah. We would put him in this postural support seat. He and all of his friends, like his grade school friends before the accident, all came and joined. His family all joined, and now we're still very connected with the family. And now he's walking, and he was told. Originally, or his mother was told, that a successful day for him in the future was going to be wheeling in from his bedroom to the living room to watch TV, to wheel back in. And it just shows that the human spirit, given enough opportunity to challenge itself, is really quite a remarkable thing, and we feel very pleased to have been part of that type of program. And I think one of the highlights in his post-accident life has been the many years that he's been whitewater rafting with us.
That's phenomenal. I'm going to summarize a little bit there, that you have been involved with, as an activist, this is a humanitarian effort. You have a love of humanity to go and create a possibility for people who would never imagine being able to be anywhere near water. I had a clinical practice before I retired, and it was working with kids with autism. Oh, wow. So their getting out in the summer meant everything. The camps made a whole heck of a lot of difference for the whole family.
So I think when I think of activism, I think of both environmental and social, and that there are many people that opportunities have been taken away from them or not presented to them as well as they should be. And so we like to think, especially working in international destinations where there's some people that have been sort of pushed aside, prejudiced against, or whatever that happens to be. People with special needs here or whatever that happens to be, that we would like to...
The disadvantaged.
Yeah, to provide them, and sometimes in some ways there's disadvantage in certain areas, but also many of those people have so much to contribute in others, that we find that in in being a voice, it's really more being an ally than anything else. And our allyship in whether that's for environment or for people. We had a big event that we helped out with our local Pride community last year, where their Pride event was canceled in June, and then they regrouped, and we had an event at our base camp in September. And the idea behind that was we just wanted to provide a place that, if nothing else, was safe, welcoming, and enjoyable.
Fantastic. So you're really a part. Now, this is exemplary of a business being part of a community. You have embedded yourself into the communities where you live, work, operate businesses, and probably internationally. I know that you're working with, or you're a member of the 1%.
1% for the Planet. So we do a program that, with our international programs, that 1% of our revenues go to environmental projects through an organization called 1% for the Planet. One of the things which is interesting about how we operate is that, and I'm not saying we do things the way we do it because we want to do it, but we do have one of our local competitors here that just hasn't included goodwill in their business model. And so for us to be able to do that, I think helps distinguish us a little bit more from the outfitting pack. And so sometimes it's nice for me to think that sometimes doing the right thing is also, in fact, the right thing to do. And so that's been successful for us from a personal perspective, but also from a business perspective.
That's absolutely wonderful. It's very enlightening. It's very heartening, really. Good humanitarian, and I'm really glad that we're focusing on you and your business today.
Well, I was raised by a beautiful, wonderful single mom, and that's something which I think has an effect on young males to have. My mother
What's mom's name?
Barbara. Was super worried that I wouldn't have enough male influence in my life, but by having the extra combination of caring and compassion and looking at things like equality and justice, all things that were presented to her by me. And I have two older siblings, but they had all moved away to university, but just the two of us growing up really formed the person that I am today. And she's just passed 3 years ago, but she's involved in our in the way we operate in my being every day.
That's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. I'd like to thank you. I would like to touch on your accolades. Basically, the National Geographic in 2008 named you as the world's #1 whitewater outfitter.
Yeah. So
the world. And here you are, humbly sitting at a table with us. And tell us about that, will you? And then you also had, you were #2 in the world for, can't find it. You'll tell me.
Sure. So.
And that's big. That's everything, man. Go ahead.
So National Geographic did a survey and a ranking of eco-adventure travel companies around the world, and there were a whole series of different categories that they did their ratings from. And in the overall picture, we didn't win, but we came in second. And so we were second to a company called Mark Thornton Safaris, which runs very high-end walking safaris in the Selous Game Reserve in Tanzania, and they use Maasai warriors as their guides. Well, kudos to them. So we were #2, but we were rated #1 in the water based in Whitewater, and we don't have Maasai warriors as our guides. We have regular humans that in fact come from a team that come from around the world, and they're super skilled and they're really well trained. And more than anything, they're great people, and so we hire based on people's character first, and provide them with a certain amount of training, because we can't just hire someone who has an amazing amount of training but doesn't have the right character for us.
Right.
And so,
like a chef,
so
that would be the right. You have to feel it, not just go through the recipe.
So that was something that was really wonderful for us to get those accolades. More than anything, to show us that we were on the right track. And
National Geographic. I mean, that is something to be totally proud of. I mean, seriously.
The two categories
Yes.
that we came in first, there were 5 different categories that they
Yes.
measured, and the 2 that we came in first for were at that time sustainability, because we were ahead of the curve in some of the different sustainability things that we were doing. And then the other one, which we really like and we're very proud of, was that it was called Spirit of Adventure.
Okay.
So they saw this spirit in us, and and it's amazing just the wording, because Esprit means spirit, and the way that we integrate learning into our activity, that people end up leaving from our experiences gaining something more than just a thrill down the river, that they also get an understanding that our staff are great ambassadors of our programs in the river corridors that we're in, and the importance of how recreation is for the quality of life for people moving forward.
And so people shouldn't just think that you're out there having a blast every day, but you are doing the work that you like and you love and you have passion about and so forth. But it's a business. You've got safety issues. You've created safety courses. You are actually, what does it say? You were a passionate traveler. You were actually the safety officer for a TV show. Can you tell me about that?
Sure. I am very pleased, and it was a great honor to work with a television program called Wild Things with Dominic Monaghan. And Dominic Monaghan, for those who, if he's not a household name, he's Merry of Merry and Pippin, the Hobbit, one of the Hobbits in the Lord of the Rings movies.
Okay.
And he was on the television show Lost, etc. And when Steve Irwin, the Australian crocodile hunter, passed away, Dom decided that he wanted to sort of be the next version of Steve Irwin. And so there was a group of 8 of us that would travel around the world. Everyone else is involved in film. Film isn't my thing. I was the sort of safety and travel officer. And Dom would film with these incredible creatures. And so it was normally filming unique cultural encounters and encounters with wild animals. And my job was to make sure that everyone had enough water, sunblock, mosquito repellent, and then if they were attacked by a wild animal, then I was supposed to save their life, which sometimes could be possible and sometimes not possible. But
well, you were a specialist in rescues, well, at least whitewater rescues. But that applied as well to your other work.
Yeah. So one of the other things that Wild Things work is sort of not so much my Esprit business, but my personal work. And another one of my personal works, which is involved in Esprit, is in teaching water rescue. And
Higgins and Langley, you got a Higgins and Langley award for that?
The most prestigious award in swiftwater rescue is called the Higgins and Langley Award.
Okay.
And I was given that award along with a videographer by the name of Mike McKay as a special commendation award in relation to education. So we put out a 12-part video series, which has had over 1 million views in 60 or 70 different countries. And it's a way that people can watch people paddling, but then also learn a little bit about swiftwater rescue. And more than anything, the idea is to inspire them to go out and take a course, and that's a course either potentially with me or with anyone else. And what was interesting about that, and it's a good business lesson, and one of the things that we apply in many different aspects of our business, is that we didn't know, we did these videos, but we didn't know how to monetize them or what to do with them. And so we decided the best thing to do was just to put them out to the world for free. And there's a big business lesson that sometimes you need to give away your best work. And in this instance we did. And by giving that away, millions of people got to see these videos and learn a little bit about water rescue. But it also opened up so many doors that when people internationally are looking at having a swiftwater rescue instructor come to deliver programs for them, having seen those videos, it's put me in a position to be a bit of a household name within that industry.
Wonderful.
And so that opens up many doors for travel as well.
Well earned. Earned. You've developed and broadened and developed. You've been doing courses. You've got the Intensive Leadership Development School. I mean, it goes on and on. You have gone very lateral.
Correct.
And that's wonderful.
Yeah.
It keeps you busy, but also keeps you engaged, doesn't it?
Yeah, and we've always, here we are, and I'm thinking, okay, when's the wind down going to start? But we have new ideas and new things that we hope to do, and I think that's just part of the entrepreneurial spirit, which is pretty hard to extinguish.
Fantastic. No, it's been nurtured, and you've been nurturing it all along. Wonderful. Question for you.
Sure.
Young people who may want to establish a business, be it something that is a me too, but better, or altogether novel, would you have any advice? I know that my husband and I have had a number of novel businesses. We had an electric bicycle business that was downtown in Ottawa, well ahead of the curve of bicycle electric bikes coming in and what have you. Now we have a garage full of them. So you need some for your business.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds great.
But there is some funding available but what about mentors, and what do you suggest for young people?
I think that more than anything, that young people need to have a spirit and drive to succeed, and not allow any of those barriers to that really get in the way. Just either move around the barriers or go over top of the barriers and to keep going. Often we look at funding being a problem, and really I think the hardest steps are the first ones. And if funding isn't immediately available, then my suggestion is scale down to a point where you can get yourself started. And then once you get started, you may find that you want to move in a different direction. You start with 2 products and you think that one is going to be the real winner, and you find that it's actually the other one is, and then you can move and follow along. So I think that starting small has some advantages. You don't need to have all your ducks in order. You don't have to have everything in a row, but you do need to take that first step. And once that first step is made, then all the other ones end up being much easier.
Wonderful. Business begets business.
Correct.
If you have acumen and if you're ready to see what's coming your way.
The other
and then to seize.
The other one that I think is important, we do this a lot, is that your best form of marketing is in fact your product. So sometimes for us, we may have trips that are what we would call non-revenue trips. We only have 2 participants, and so by the time we start our bus, we've already lost $500, to be able to operate the trip. And in many aspects, people say that's not very smart business, but we did that in our first year. And we had a gentleman who came rafting. He was the only person that we had that day, and he then spurred on about 400 people to then come with us. And if we didn't take a chance on that one day, we mightn't have survived. We were in that precarious a situation in those early years. So we think that whenever there's an opportunity to show what you can do, to strut your stuff, to provide a service that's, it may just be the comments that someone has after that experience, that they give you a good Google review, and the next thing you know, someone then buys in from what they saw. So don't be afraid to go out of your way to do things, even if there's not that immediate return. You have to look at the return on a longer scale rather than on a shorter scale.
I think sometimes people say that failure is actually a good lesson and spurs on more commitment. You learn from everything, be it a day when you didn't make your quota, or you've had a rough business. Basically, you learn from it.
Yeah, I think that when I was speaking earlier about adversity, failure, adversity, challenge, are all things that can either they can knock you down, but it's not the measure of being knocked down. It's by the measure is how well you get back up, and able to move on and learn from those lessons, and then continue pushing forward.
And some 34 years later,
here we are. So last year was my 40th year guiding rafts on the Ottawa River. So I'm into my 41st season, having worked for another operator beforehand.
Yes.
And I'm starting to get the hang of it.
That's so sweet. We don't have any crocodiles, not too many snakes.
Yeah, here we don't have that. But the good news is that when you are rafting on rivers that have crocodiles, you don't need to be able to swim faster than a crocodile. If your raft capsizes, you just need to swim faster than everybody else.
Good one. Jim, thank you for your time. Thank you for explaining, giving us a situation of how you began. Very humble beginnings, well supported by your family, your mom, with just good spirit, good morality, and your energetic personality. Wouldn't let anything get you down, including, how you, I love how you got your first loan. We didn't quite tell them exactly the way.
Yeah.
Good on you.
So sometimes
I'm not saying that's, yeah, I'm saying it is. Yeah. I'm saying that, yeah, you got to take your chances sometimes and sell yourself in the best way possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, one of the things which I find really interesting is that many people will say, and they've been saying this now for 30 years, there's nothing in the Pontiac. And that's why we're talking. Yeah, and somehow we need to turn that nothingness into a strength rather than a weakness. So
how do you mean by that?
Well, for example, we have these three rivers, the Moines, the Coulanges, and the Loire, and each one of them is starting to go through different levels of protection through the Quebec government. And what really needs to happen, I believe, my belief, this is my personal belief, is that we can go beyond these sort of local or provincial levels of protection for those areas and think a little bit bigger. And I believe that the Pontiac is, in fact, when you look at the headwaters of those rivers starting up in the boreal forest, and then they come down and they enter into the St. Lawrence Algonquin lowlands, that in fact that region surrounding those rivers, if we were to think bigger, could be part of a UN biosphere reserve. And so if you were to have within this region a United Nations biosphere reserve, that could be an attraction to bring more people to the region. And that's where, when we look at, thinking big, and here we had this thought of the incinerator project here for the region. Well, if you're thinking big in one way, like a UN biosphere reserve, well, that and an incinerator, they don't mesh, they don't go together.
Right.
So what we need to do is not just move one thing out, but what are we going to bring in? And I know that there's a place called the Frontenac Arch. The Frontenac Arch is a UN biosphere reserve in southeastern Ontario that was developed mostly by a group of volunteers who went through the paperwork to try to make the application, and that it's not unreasonable that that's what our area could be. And if you could imagine trying to promote
hanging on to what we have has been pristine, natural, actually become something.
Making lemonade from lemons. And so when we talk about, the economic position of the Pontiac being low in the provincial scale and what could drive more people here, more business here, more businesses here, is that sometimes you need a hook, and one of those umbrellas for that hook would be that the fact that the United Nations recognizes this region as a very special ecological place.
And that is possible, to your estimation?
100%. We just have to get the right people, to have the right vision, to be able to do the right application to move those things forward. And I think that when we look at different things for the region and how we're going to move forward, we can do something which is detrimental to the region. We could do nothing and maintain the status quo, or if we believe that our strengths are in our wilderness and our natural beauty, etc., then we need to make those additional steps forward. So if
you don't do your planning 4 years at a time between your elections,
well,
if you have a longer term plan and the overall picture, I can see what you're saying.
Yeah, we just need to re-look at our vision. This region has a program called Vision 2020, and then now I think it's Vision 2040 or whatever that happens to be. And I was involved in the original Vision 2020.
That's where I met. That's where I saw your company in the first place.
Way back, and one of the things that was difficult was that they were looking at moving forward, but they didn't look at where we were coming from. and we realized that we really didn't move that far from 40 years to 20 years to to the future 20 years. And so now I think that this issue that's just happened with the incinerator, I think in fact has a lot of potential benefit for our region. A bunch of people got together from a grassroots level and said, hey, this is not our Pontiac. So now what we need to do is keep that momentum alive and not just say, okay, we've moved this issue off the shelf, let's go back to our status quo. Let's now try and see what is our Pontiac, and how do we put that Pontiac not just in front of ourselves and not just in front of our neighbors, but how do we put it in front of the world? And one of those regions, I think, is the promotion of our, we have four incredible rivers as resources, and that could be something that we could be world renowned for because it's unique.
And that could benefit people all along the watershed.
From Rapide de Joachim all the way through. So.
Very creative, Jim, and hopefully, as a result of our chat, people start giving thought to that. Is there someone they could reach? Is there somewhere they should, could start to, at least with the seed, can get some tips, some pointers and ideas? Would it possibly be you?
Well, sure. I mean, that could be me. There's also a variety of, one of the great things that's happened over the last, let's say, 20 years is our ability to communicate, share photos, share ideas, through social media is so much greater and easier than it ever was in the past. So I think that there's a variety of citizen-based groups now in the Pontiac that people can find online, and that being able to reach out or plant some seeds amongst those groups might be the way to do it. So hopefully this video might be one of those things that helps plant those seeds.
We'll see what feedback we get, and if people want to actually pursue this further, let citizens of the Pontiac COP know or reach Jim. How's the best way? Through your company email or website?
Through email, or in fact, we're on all the different social media platforms. And they can also we're happy for people to pick up the phone or just come over and land on our property. And I think that really it's the, when there's a little bit of a spark, you then need to add some kindling. And then after the kindling, you then need to add something of intermediate size. And then bigger, and then bigger and bigger. But that's how these little ideas from little things, big things grow, and I think that takes a lot of input, and we can see that people here in the Pontiac have the potential to make things happen, and so that's what we need to do, not just on the things that we don't want, but to try to establish the things, in fact, that we do want.
Wonderful. I think what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing in my mind's eye is a man with a vision, and that sharing of that vision. Because again, sometimes we just don't know. I'm not on the ground. A lot of us aren't on the water to know that. And so, really do appreciate what you bring, and not just that you have a National Geographic kind of view of the world. It's big, and you can also see a bigger place for us in that world.
I don't remember exactly when it was, but it's well over 25 years ago. I was in Gros Morne National Park, and while I was there, I was in the Gros Morne National Park Visitor Center, which is a beautiful reception center in Western Newfoundland.
Okay.
And I remember at that point in time, from there, calling to the former head of our SADC, and saying, I'm in this amazing visitor center. There are thousands of people here.
Yes.
They're doing all sorts of stuff within this beautiful wilderness region. And there's no town that's any more vibrant or viable than our towns here in the Pontiac. We have the opportunity to create a biosphere reserve the same way that Gros Morne has been. And that could be a real anchor for so much
Oh,
else here.
beautiful.
You know, and so this is not a new idea. It's something that's been, you know, floated around, but we still haven't grabbed hold, and maybe that's because the timing wasn't right. But now that we have a bunch of active citizen groups within our region, maybe this is the time, and maybe that will be what will help pull us forward out of the criticism of us being an economically deprived or low area, depressed area, that we can move ourselves forward, because there's no reason, being only 90 minutes from our nation's capital, that this region isn't acting like the Muskokas, what Muskokas are to Toronto, that we have that opportunity to do that to Ottawa.
It starts with a vision and it's like your own self-concept and your own, you know, how you feel about yourself. It's an identity for the Pontiac, and the vision becomes our identity, I would say.
And sometimes that vision, you know, and I admit this wholeheartedly, is that sometimes it's hard to see the forest for the trees, right? There's a great quote from Khalil Gibran, his book The Prophet, that the mountain is always clearer to the climber from the plains. And so when we're here in the Pontiac and we're entrenched in all the things that we do, we don't necessarily see the wonders that are here, but we are truly in a wonderful, unique, enchanted area. And so we need to try and figure out how we can, you know, one of the worst things about tourism is being the best kept secret in tourism. So we need to try and figure out a little bit more product to then be able to expand that out to the rest of the world.
We have geography, we do, and that's a very important feature. We also have history. I mean, settlers who came to this valley, who came here in the first place, before we had, you know, the whole unity of Canada. So we have a lot to grow on if we actually seize it. I would say I really feel for what you're saying.
One of the things that I love is that when we run trips to Costa Rica, and when I pick people up from the airport and I drive to our base in Costa Rica, we go past one of the football stadiums in a town called Alajuela, and it's the Scotiabank football stadium. And so, but when you think about the roots of Scotiabank, is that, you know, here, George Bryson, with a lumber baron who came over here from Scotland, started the Lumbermen's Bank. The Lumbermen's Bank then became the Bank of Ottawa. The Bank of Ottawa then merged with the Bank of Nova Scotia to become Scotiabank. So in fact, the roots of Scotiabank can be traced right back to the Bryson House in Mansfield.
Phenomenal.
Right? And that also is, you know, part of the roots of you know, of our local governance. You know, this is the great I'm not sure how many greats, grandfather of our warden. And so, you know, when I'm in those different locations and I see Scotiabank,
isn't that amazing?
I can bring it back that the cultural roots of Scotiabank is right around the corner from us.
Fantastic.
And most people, I think, locally wouldn't realize that we have that type of influence, which is now worldwide, started right here in the Pontiac.
Oh, that is phenomenal and mind-blowing, and I like the context. Jim, thank you so very, very much for your patience in sharing this, man. It's really, we're going places.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.